terms of having brand new exclusive games available, Xbox Series had a rough launch in November 2020. With the delay of Halo Infinite and the lack of any other new first-party exclusives, Microsoft instead handed the spotlight to a bunch of indie games. One of the stars of that lineup was the Falconeer, an open-air action RPG developed almost entirely by a single person. It launched on Game Pass in February and finally flew to other platforms a month ago. Is soaring through its skies a flight through the heavens or full of turbulence? Let's find out if the Falconeer is a Game Pass or a game fail.
Ascend now, Falconeer.
The Falconeer is set in a pirate-infested fantasy world where warring factions are fighting to gain control of various islands. You play as one of the Falconeers, who pilots a giant weaponized bird to accomplish missions for the various factions. You play all sides, and the initial story arc has your home island losing control of a mine to pirates.
Donkel's leasehold of Madoin will not be renewed.
The response is to let a neighboring lumber mill get ransacked and then save it to gain control. You then take out the pirates to clean up the loose ends, and you are accused of hypocrisy. While we assume there is a payoff at some point, we have no clue what it is. We are multiple hours into the game, and the primary plot remains a mystery.
Faster, Thomas!
The plot isn't the only thing that isn't clear in the Falconeer. The game's structure is left entirely for the player to discover. You take missions from your home island and eventually hit a wall where they become too difficult. Then it's time to explore to unlock the next viable progression path. The other islands have their own quests and shops, but you must buy a permit to access them. The shops sell much better weapons, permanent buffs, and better birds to fly, which are unlocked via race courses. Not much is marked on the map, so it brings new meaning to the phrase flying blind. We appreciate its open structure, but it would be nice to know where the rails are before you're forced to jump off them.
Let us hope it's that straightforward.
The Falconeer is essentially a dogfighting game, and the controls are touchy. In order to gain the boost, you need to go fast, roll, or make U-turns. You need to either dive down or ride a jet stream. The bird will automatically roll if you turn while starting a boost, so it's difficult to make fine adjustments in the window of time that's provided. Projectile combat is fine, but even basic enemies take a lot of damage before falling from the skies. The biggest problem with the Falconeer is its lack of difficulty balance. As mentioned, after you hit a wall in the main questline, you have to find other missions to grind for experience and money. Despite each mission having a rating, it's a total crapshoot as to whether you'll be able to complete it. You'd assume a higher paying job would be more challenging than lower paying ones, but that's not always the case. A 4-skull mission may have you defending an island from a horde of enemies, while a 6-skull mission may have you facing a single airship that's easily cheesed and beaten. You can earn 600 splinters for taking out a dangerous target, or 1,000 splinters for simply visiting a location that's already marked on the map. We eventually gave up when we still couldn't beat a 4-skull story mission after grinding for a better bird and gun. Even though the aerial combat genre isn't as prominent as it used to be, Game Pass still has a decent number of comps. Star Wars Squadrons is one of the best dogfighting games of the modern era, but that's all it does. Conversely, No Man's Sky has an extremely open world and lots of progression, but ship combat is a relatively minor part of the experience. Moving closer to the ground, Project Wingman is a more traditional dogfighting game that has received solid reviews, but it's also a relatively bare-bones experience. On console, Crimson Sky's High Road to Revenge is a cult classic from the original Xbox era, but it's not as impressive as we remember it to be. If you don't care about combat, Microsoft Flight Simulator towers above the other flight games if you own an Xbox Series console or a PC that can run it. Now it's time to find out, is the Falconeer a Game Pass or a game fail?
This is madness!
We appreciate the ambition of the Falconeer, and there might be a good game in here somewhere. We just haven't been able to find it. The difficulty choke points pop up seemingly at random, and grinding side missions has failed to remedy it. We are many hours into it, and we are still confused on exactly what the game is. The dogfighting is passable but flawed, and fails to stand out among the stronger comps. If you enjoy this genre and have already played all the other comps, you might be more willing to spend time to bend its difficulty curve. But for most, the Falconeer requires too much work from the player. Soaring through the skies is exhilarating, but eventually you have to come back to Earth where it ends in a crash landing. The Falconeer gets a game fail. For next week, the randomizer selects Age of Empires 2.